The sun beat down on the gleaming black Camry as Marcus Reynolds adjusted his rearview mirror for the 5th time. 6 months at the FBI Academy in Quantico hadn't prepared him for this assignment. His fingers, usually steady when handling a Glock, tapped nervously on the steering wheel as he waited outside the Atlanta airport terminal. Just an Uber driver picking up passengers, he whispered to himself, straightening the collar of his plain blue polo shirt. At-34, Special Agent Reynolds had built a reputation for dismantling human trafficking networks. But now, Operation Nightwatch required a different approach. Reports of targeted harassment against black drivers in the city's northern suburbs had caught the Bureau's attention, with disturbing connections to a local police precinct. "You're up, Marcus," came Deputy Director Sawyer's voice through his earpiece, nearly invisible in his right ear. "Your passenger is a Bureau asset." Normal conversation. "Remember, you're just building your cover today." Marcus nodded to himself, eyes scanning the crowded pickup zone. "Copy that." Reynolds is rolling. 3 hours and 4 rides later, Marcus cruised down Oakwood Avenue. His last passenger, an elderly woman returning from a doctor's appointment, had just been dropped off. "Control, I'm headed to the Riverside area now," Marcus reported quietly. The flash of blue and red lights in his rearview mirror came without warning. Marcus checked his speedometer, 28 in a 30 zone. His heart rate quickened, not from fear, but from recognition. This was exactly the pattern described in the complaints that he pulled over smoothly, keeping both hands visible on the steering wheel. Through his mirror, Marcus observed a stocky officer approaching, hand resting casually on his holstered weapon. The name tag read, Blackwell. "License and registration," Officer Blackwell demanded, not bothering with a greeting. His voice carried a sharp edge, his eyes cold and assessing. "May I ask why I'm being pulled over, officer?" Marcus asked evenly. Blackwell's jaw tightened. "You made an illegal lane change back there." Marcus knew he hadn't. His dashcam, disguised as a phone mount, was recording everything. The real reason was becoming painfully clear with each second of Blackwell's dismissive glare. "Sir, I need your license and registration now," Blackwell repeated, his hand moving from holster to the snap that secured his weapon. Marcus reached slowly for his glove compartment. "My registration is in here, officer." "I'm moving slowly." "Speed it up." "I don't have all day," Blackwell snapped, leaning down to peer through the window, his breathing heavy and impatient. As Marcus handed over his carefully crafted fake license and vehicle registration, Blackwell snatched them with unnecessary force. "So, Mr. Reynolds, what brings you to this neighborhood? Don't see many of you around here." The implication hung in the air like poison gas. Marcus maintained his composure, though his jaw muscles tightened imperceptibly. "Just doing my job, sir. I drive for Uber." Blackwell snorted. "Pretty nice car for an Uber driver. How'd you afford this? You sure this is your vehicle?" "Yes sir, it is. I've been driving for 3 years now." The officer circled the car, dragging his baton along the paint. "Step out of the vehicle." "May I ask why that's necessary?" Marcus questioned, his voice steady despite the growing tension. "Because I said so." Blackwell barked, his face reddening. "Don't make me ask twice." Marcus complied, opening the door slowly. As he stepped out, Blackwell immediately pushed him against the car. "Spread your legs." Hands on the hood. A passing vehicle slowed down. An older white couple stared but quickly drove on when Blackwell glared at them. "I smell something suspicious," Blackwell declared, though there was nothing to smell. "I'm going to search your vehicle." "Officer, I don't consent to a search," Marcus stated firmly. Blackwell laughed coldly. "Consent? That's cute. You people always think you know the law. But I am the law out here. Understand?" Marcus's earpiece crackled. Green light, Reynolds. Operation parameters met. Something shifted in Marcus's demeanor. His shoulders straightened, and the look of submission vanished from his face. "Officer Blackwell, I'm terminating this interaction," he stated, his voice suddenly carrying unmistakable authority. Blackwell's face contorted with rage. "You don't terminate anything. I'll have you in cuffs for." In one smooth motion, Marcus reached into his back pocket and flipped open a leather wallet, revealing a gleaming FBI badge. Special Agent Marcus Reynolds, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Badge number 6472. You are interfering with a federal investigation. The blood drained from Blackwell's face. His hand, which had been reaching for his handcuffs, froze midair. "This vehicle is federal property. That camera," Marcus pointed to the dashcam, "has been recording this entire interaction, including your unnecessary use of force and racially motivated statements." Blackwell took an unsteady step backward. I was just following protocol." "No, Officer Blackwell," Marcus replied, straightening his shirt. "You were following something else entirely. And we've been tracking it for months." Within 30 minutes, the quiet street transformed into a hub of activity. 2 unmarked FBI vehicles arrived, agents securing the scene with practiced efficiency. Deputy Director Sawyer, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair, approached Marcus as Officer Blackwell sat handcuffed in the back of one vehicle. 3 months of preparation pays off," Sawyer remarked, reviewing the footage on a tablet. "You handled it perfectly." Marcus nodded toward Blackwell. "He's just one piece of a bigger puzzle, isn't he?" "Operation Nightwatch began after we identified a disturbing pattern," Sawyer explained. 28 black rideshare drivers harassed in this district over 6 months. 6 arrested on fabricated charges. 2 beaten severely. "And all by officers from the same precinct," Marcus added. "Exactly. We suspected a coordinated effort targeting minority drivers to maintain what they call neighborhood integrity. But suspicion isn't proof." Marcus understood completely. The FBI had placed him undercover after 3 drivers reported having their earnings seized as suspected drug money during pretextual stops. "Captain Dennison at the precinct?" Marcus asked. Sawyer's expression hardened. "We've traced text messages between him and 5 officers, including Blackwell. They call it street cleaning. They've been shaking down drivers and keeping the cash, all while filing falsified reports. And creating a climate of fear for black residents," Marcus said grimly. 2 days later, Marcus stood in the back of a packed press conference at the federal building in downtown Atlanta. U.S. Attorney Gloria Washington addressed the crowd of journalists, their cameras flashing constantly. "Today, I am announcing federal charges against 6 officers from the North District Police Department, including Captain James Dennison," Washington declared, her voice unwavering. Behind her, a screen displayed mugshots of the officers involved. "These individuals are charged with multiple counts of civil rights violations, extortion, falsification of police reports, and conspiracy. The evidence is overwhelming and includes video documentation, text messages, financial records, and testimony from numerous victims." Marcus watched as the reporters frantically scribbled notes. His gaze drifted to the side of the room where 3 of the rideshare drivers who had been victimized stood together, their expressions a mixture of vindication and lingering disbelief. The investigation, led by the FBI's Civil Rights Division, revealed a systematic targeting of black rideshare drivers in affluent neighborhoods, Washington continued. Officers confiscated over $45,000 from innocent drivers, while falsely claiming these stops were based on traffic violations or suspicious behavior. The room erupted with questions. A journalist from the Atlanta Tribune stood up. Was Officer Terrence Blackwell's arrest the breaking point in this case? Washington nodded toward Marcus, who stepped forward to the podium. Officer Blackwell's actions were recorded as part of our operation, Marcus explained. His stop followed the exact pattern we had documented. His words, explicitly showing racial bias, coupled with his illegal search attempt, provided irrefutable evidence of the discriminatory practice these officers had normalized. On screens throughout the room, the dashcam footage played, showing Blackwell's face twisted with contempt as he uttered, "You people always think you know the law. But I am the law out here." 3 months later, Marcus sat across from Damon Powell, one of the drivers who had been wrongfully arrested and had his earnings confiscated. They met at a community center in South Atlanta where a town hall was about to begin. "Never thought I'd see real consequences," Powell said, shaking his head in wonder. "When that officer took my money and threatened to plant drugs in my car if I reported him, I felt powerless." Marcus nodded. That's exactly what they counted on. The silence of fear. All charges dropped, record expunged, and full restitution, Powell continued. But more than that, knowing they can't do this to anyone else. That's what matters. The community center filled with residents, local officials, and representatives from ride-sharing companies. Acting Police Commissioner Regina Daniels, recently appointed after the scandal, approached the podium. "Today marks the implementation of our new accountability measures," she announced. "Every patrol vehicle in our department now has mandatory dashcams that cannot be disabled. We've instituted a civilian review board with real oversight power, and our new anti-bias training program begins next week, developed in consultation with civil rights attorneys and community leaders." From the back of the room, Deputy Director Sawyer caught Marcus's eye and gave a subtle nod of approval. Additionally, Daniels continued, "We're launching a specialized hotline for reporting officer misconduct, with direct routing to both internal affairs and an independent civilian panel." As applause filled the room, Marcus felt his phone vibrate. A text from one of the ride-share drivers: "They just dropped the body cam footage from Dennison's arrest. Man is crying like a baby. Justice." After the town hall, Marcus walked with Powell to the parking lot. "You going back to Quantico now?" Powell asked. Marcus shook his head. "Not yet. Bureaus approved a new task force focused on policing accountability across the Southeast. They asked me to lead it." "Good," Powell said firmly. "Because what happened here, it's happening everywhere. And now we have a blueprint to fight it," Marcus replied, looking back at the community center where people still mingled, sharing stories and building connections. "It's not perfect progress, but it's real." As the setting sun painted the Atlanta skyline in hues of orange and purple, Marcus knew the road ahead remained challenging. Systemic change never came easily. But for the first time in years, he saw genuine momentum. Sometimes, justice began with a single traffic stop and the courage to stand firm when others expected you to stand down.